Hello, I'm Nathan from Streamlined Insight. Today I'm going to be presenting the Flex Timeline Followback, a web-delivered timeline followback tool that's optimized for user friendliness, customizability, efficiency, and security. So, what am I going to be covering in this presentation? I'm going to provide a bird's eye view and overall structure of the Flex Timeline Followback. So it plugs into REDCap research database, but provides a separate user interface that makes data entry more convenient and easier to understand. So I'll provide a bird's eye view, and then I will provide a tutorial of how to operate the app, how to create surveys, how to manage research staff logins, all of that stuff that the research staff will be doing on their end. And then I'll provide a calendar survey demonstration, which is what the participants, the research subjects, will be interfacing with. And then I'll cover some limitations to the tool as it currently exists. And then I'll provide some various options for how to get access to this tool. So from the bird's eye view, we have the admin app. That's where we'll manage staff logins, create surveys. So that's sort of its own website. And then in addition to that, there's the calendar survey website that provides survey instructions, and that's where participants will enter and submit the data. So there's interaction with the REDCap database. That's where the data automatically gets stored. That's submitted from the calendar survey. Participant links are also stored in the REDCap database. So that's where you'll copy and paste a URL, send that to the participant, or open that up during, some sort of baseline in-person session. So that's where links are going to be stored as well as the data. Um, and what facilitates the interfacing in the background between the admin app and the REDCap database and between the calendar survey and the REDCap database is Amazon Web Servers. So that is sort of the backend tool that encrypts, decrypts passwords as well as survey links. So the user on the front end doesn't get to see any of that. If they inspect the web page, none of the encryption decryption code is accessible. Um, and we use this also to store a user's database, as well as some project information. Um, and it also helps facilitate a secure data transfer to REDCap. Important thing to note is that none of the Flex Timeline Followback interacts with protected or identifiable health information in any way. Um, so if that was a concern in any way, you can just kind of cross that one off. So next we're going to move into how to use the admin site. So we'll show how to log in, how to set up a REDCap project, how to sync with REDCap projects. So sync the Flex Timeline Fallback tool with the REDCap project on the other end. We'll also show how to go from creating timeline fallback surveys with default variables as well as custom variables. And when this is submitted, the fields that will house the data in REDCap will automatically be generated. We'll also show how to review and test surveys after creating them, show how to delete timeline fallback surveys, and how to unsync REDCap projects from the admin site. And then lastly, we'll show how to manage user logins. So for the login page, it's pretty straightforward. You'll have a username and password. You'll plug that in. The URL is also going to be something that you can designate on your own by purchasing the app. Your university logo can also be presented here as well, and your lab group name can also be presented in the top right. So after logging in, this is the dashboard that the user will be presented with. So this is me logging in here as Nathan. And it currently states no timeline fallback in OTLFB, UAT. So the REDCap project that I have synced here OTLFB, UAT. There's no survey that's created for that REDCap project. So on the left is the existing projects. On the top right, where you see the user icon, that's where you'll go if you want to manage users or log out. This button here obviously is to create a timeline fallback survey for the project. None currently exists. And to remove the project, the REDCap project from the admin site for this user, for that you can click unsync REDCap project. To sync a new project, and this is going to be the starting place when you get using the website, you click add project. So that's what we're going to focus on next. When you want to add a project and sync with a REDCap project, you have to make sure that things are set up properly. So the first step is to set up a blank REDCap project that's going to be designated for the timeline follow back data. Going to add a CSV data dictionary. So this is something I can provide. It's a very simple process where you go to the designer data dictionary, you load in a CSV. So up here on the top, you can see that there's a CSV with some very basic information. We're going to be adding a record ID field, a screening ID field. You can also add a subject ID field. Um, and by uploading this dictionary, it'll create the form in REDCap that helps us get going. So you upload that by going here, data dictionary, choose file, and you can see that I've already uploaded it. Confirm the changes, so commit the changes. And then we have this form called the subject ID form that's now available in the REDCap project. To confirm that, to review the changes, you can go to record status dashboard and check out subject ID form. And you'll see that that form now exists. The last thing you want to do before syncing a project with the Flex Timeline Fallback is to give user API rights. So this is very important because you need to be able to generate an API token. So you can do that by going to user rights, clicking on the user, edit user privileges, and then making sure that API export, API import update, those two boxes are checked. Then that will allow you to go to the API section in REDCap and request an API token. The token is going to be a key to allow the Flex Timeline Fallback tool to access the REDCap project. For syncing a REDCap project with the Flex Timeline Fallback tool, just takes a few steps. So you want to copy the API key or the API token from your REDCap project. So I've hidden mine. Make sure not to give up your tokens for security purposes. You want to keep that hidden, keep to yourself. But you'll go ahead and copy it from this page here in REDCap and then bring that over to the Flex Timeline Fallback tool, the admin app, where it says Add Project. You'll enter that right there and you'll confirm the sync. So if you've copied it correctly, you should be able to see that the project is identified. So say, okay, here's the project name. This one is called Online Timeline Fallback Streamlined Insight. And go ahead and confirm that sync. And then you'll be able to create a timeline fallback survey. So that's the next step that we'll cover is how to create a survey, which will then create forms in REDCap for that survey. So click the Create Timeline Fallback Survey button, and we're presented with this page here where we get to select a calendar length, as well as choose variables that we want to collect in the calendar survey. So the calendar length ranges from 1 week all the way up to 12 weeks. So you have flexibility in how long or how many days of data that you want to collect. And then you get to choose up to 3 timeline fallback variables. And this is where you're provided with a lot of flexibility. So in terms of substances, there's some preset substances here that you can select from alcohol, cigarettes, e-cigarettes, etc. And then there's some substances or variables here that can be saved from prior sessions. So if you add, a unique variable at one point, that'll be saved for later accessibility later on. So that's these handful of here. And then if you want to add a completely new variable or substance, you can just go ahead and click the other button. Similarly, depending on the variable or substance you select, then you'll be provided with a mode or unit to kind of further specify what you're asking about. So you can specify, for alcohol, here are some of the subset modes for alcohol. You can choose liquor, wine, etc. You can also customize a mode or unit for any substance you provide to create, a new unit that isn't provided in the default setup. For data type, you have two options. You can specify the variable as numeric. So that means you're going to want the user to set in to input a number of uses or number of drinks or number of times that they exercised, or maybe it's a unit, a number of miles that they ran, something like that. And then binary simply means did you engage in this or did you not for that day? And so for that, they're provided with a checkbox, not a number input. So when you have three or your substances selected up to three, you'll be presented with this. You can revise this before creating the survey. But this is what it looks like when you set up your variables. Here I've set up some of the default variables. So I set up alcohol, cigarettes, and e-cigarettes. This is all default. Standard substance is here, kind of the bread and butter for the original intention of this tool. But you can also add custom variables, like I said. So here I'm actually going to be revising the submission to show um, adding a running variable. The mode unit is going to be miles here. For category, you can select whether it's a category or whether it's a behavior, substance, or medication. We're going to call this a behavior. I selected numeric data type, and the red cap field is going to designate what I want this field to be called in the red cap form. So after submitting several custom variables, this is, an example of what that would look like, where we have running, supplement, and push-ups. Notice how you don't need to specify a mode. So for push-ups, there's no mode relevant there. And I designated that to be a binary type. So that'll have checkboxes provided to the user when they fill out the calendar survey. Also, when you're creating custom substances, you'll be able to provide custom instructions. And this is done by providing a URL that links to a publicly accessible document online. So you can set up a Google Drive document or a document on Box that has some further instructions and or if there's a already an accessible document PDF online that you want the user to look at to understand how to fill in a variable, then you could provide that URL here, and then that will be presented later on in the calendar survey. So here for demonstration, I've put in this publicly accessible PDF that describes sort of how to count up miles in some way, but it's mainly for demonstration purposes. So after that is submitted, then we're provided with this overview of what the survey is that we looked at. So we have the timeline follow back survey details, 3 weeks, 21 days. So I set this as a 3-week calendar um, with running variables, supplement variables, and a push-ups variable. And this here is hyperlinked. So you can go ahead and view those instructions. That URL that you provided is sort of embedded in this hyperlink there. And then, one of the conveniences of this tool is that it'll automatically create the fields in REDCap. So here there's a timeline follow back form added to the project. There's a date, there's an event, and then there is the three variables that I created on my own. You can see that this is already designated to be sort of a binary type of variable. And so for each day, there's these five different fields. So you can see date two, be the date, the second date in the calendar, and that will be filled in when the participant submits their data. There will also be a timeline follow back link form, which provides a URL that's specific to that participant, specific to that record ID. So then that row in REDCap, the URL will have embedded in it the information needed for the Flex timeline fallback to know that the data submitted is corresponds to this URL, corresponds to this record ID, and the data will be submitted accordingly. So this is what you would copy paste if you're having participants, research participants complete these remotely. So for reviewing and testing your survey, like I said, you can review the project details that are provided in the admin site. The variable instructions are hyperlinked here, so you can check to make sure that that is directing the user properly. You can also generate a survey link for testing the survey. This is essentially creates a new record within your REDCap project to basically play around and submit some fake data if you wanted to. So by clicking that, it provides a hyperlink to the survey. You can go directly to the calendar survey from here. And then for cleanup purposes, you can also click delete test record, and that will sort of clean up that test record that you made in REDCap. So for deleting your survey, very simple. There's a button here at the bottom. This will delete the fields and data within REDCap. Only use this during testing. So if you're kind of building a survey, it doesn't look quite right, you could delete it, rebuild it until everything looks right. That's the point of the delete survey and the test link buttons, is they help you kind of refine and set up the survey. So if you want to unsync a REDCap project, there's this button here, unsync user from REDCap project. This will remove the project from your REDCap projects list, but the fields and data within REDCap are going to be unaffected. So basically, if you're kind of retiring a project and you want to clean up your admin site, you can use this button. And this is the last part of the admin site to cover is managing users. So on the top right user icon, you can click that, click manage users, and you're provided with a page where you can add users. You can also modify current users, designate whether someone is admin or not admin. Um, and basically, an admin allows a user to create and delete surveys and edit other users. So if you want someone just to be able to view projects, then you can create them without admin privileges. So next we'll move into a calendar survey demonstration. So this is what the participants are going to be seeing when they're completing a survey. So the process here consists of first sending out that unique link for the survey. This link is automatically generated within REDCap. The instructions, the first three pages of the survey are instructions, and they're going to correspond to the variables of interest. Then the user will be presented with an event calendar to help with recall and contextualize behavioral patterns. And then a calendar for numeric variables of interest are presented, and then a calendar for binary yes, no variables of interest are presented. And then lastly, there's a review calendar to confirm the entries. And then once they're confirmed, data will automatically get submitted to the REDCap database connected to the survey. So we'll cover this survey demonstration using default for like standard variables, alcohol, cigarettes, and e-cigarettes. And then I'll also show what it looks like with the custom variables, the ones that I submitted earlier, running push-ups and supplements. So for convenience, I think I mentioned this before. For testing a survey, you can retrieve a test link directly from within the admin app by generating a test link and then just making sure you clean that up after you complete testing by deleting the test record. But during actual data collection, you're going to get the link from the REDCap form, the timeline fallback link form. And so you can see this here. I'm in the OTLFB Streamlined Insight REDCap project, and I am copying, pasting this link into a new tab on my browser. So that's going to bring me to the survey. Here's page one of the survey for standard substance example. So you can see on the left, I'll indicate whether we're viewing the survey for a standard substance arrangement or the custom arrangement. So I'll go ahead and read through the instructions. Welcome to the calendar survey. You will be presented with a calendar of the past 5 weeks and asked to fill in personal events, use of alcohol, use of cigarettes, use of e-cigarettes. Filling out the calendar is not hard, but it is very important that you follow the instructions carefully. Although we recognize that you won't have perfect memory, try to be as accurate as possible. Before we start, in the past 5 weeks, have you engaged in the following substances? Alcohol? Yes, no. Cigarettes? Yes, no. E-cigarettes? Yes or no. So similarly, page one will have the same structure when you're evaluating custom substances. And the list will simply update based on those variables. Personal events is going to be the same, but you can see you'll be asked to fill in running, use of supplement, push-ups. And here's a point where if there's an awkwardness in the readability, that might be a reason to go ahead and revise uh, the survey variable names you provided. So instead of supplements, plural, might be more fitting here. That's something that maybe I'd go back and change if I were actually setting this up for data collection. And then, like before, we see in the past 3 weeks, have you engaged in the following medications or behaviors? And if these are marked with no, the variable will not even appear in the calendar. So why ask, a participant to fill in zeros if they never used any of that substance or behavior? And so then zeros will be automatically entered into the REDCap project for that variable when they go ahead and submit their survey. So page two of instructions gets a little more detailed. First, you will enter personal events to help with your memory of substance use. Next, for each day in the calendar, you will enter the number of alcohol-containing drinks you had: beer, hard seltzer, liquor, wine. Enter a zero on days that you did not drink alcohol. You will also enter the number of cigarettes you smoked. Enter a zero on days you did not smoke cigarettes. Finally, for each day you vaped an e-cigarette containing nicotine, click the corresponding checkbox. So you can see that there's two numeric variables here, and then the e-cigarette variable is the binary type. And so it provides a little glimpse of what the calendar is actually going to look like below with the three variables. And then below, it explains sort of standard quantities. This is especially relevant for alcohol and substance use variables. And so the standard substances we have default instructions that are embedded into the survey. So we explain, one standard drink is 12 ounces of beer or hard seltzer, 1.5 ounces of liquor, 5 ounces of wine. And we even have a standard drink sizes chart that's embedded in here. So if the participant has some questions about how to quantify some unique mixtures of alcohol, they can refer to this chart here to help out. There's a, beer, hard seltzer section, a liquor section, a wine section, and then some other alternative drinks as well. So page two for the custom substance example is um, a little bit distilled, it's a little more generic because we can't provide the language for everything. So we're starting here at this line. Next, for each day in the calendar, you will record running in miles. Enter a zero on days you did not engage in running. You will also record supplement pills use. Enter a zero on days you did not use supplement pills. Finally, for each day you engaged in push-ups, click the corresponding checkbox. So again, we have two numeric, one binary variable, and we can see how that is going to be displayed later on. Before continuing, it provides a reference guide for running. So this was the hyperlinked variable that we provided when we created the survey earlier on. So if you click that, it'll send to that PDF document that's publicly accessible through that URL. Moving on to page 3 of the instructions. This is actually pretty straightforward. There's not many differences between standard and custom substances. So we have helpful hints. Start from yesterday and work backward through time. Consider your regular patterns of substance use. Use your phone, calendar photos, etc. to help remember notable events that may have affected these patterns. Your best estimate. So we realize this isn't easy to remember with 100% accuracy. If you're not sure whether you drink 8 drinks or whether you drink on Thursday or Friday, give it your best estimate. What is important is that 8 drinks is very different from 1 to 2 drinks or 25 drinks. The goal is to get a sense of how often and how much you engaged in each substance. It's only a minor tweak here when switching over to the custom substance example, is we realize it isn't easy to remember with 100%. That's the same. And then there's a couple bullet points cut out. And that says the goal is to get a sense of how often, how much you engage in each medication or behavior. Okay, so after the instructions are complete, we're presented with the event calendar. So the user will go ahead and choose from the drop down these options: parties, hangovers, funerals, vacations, holiday, sickness, concerts, or sports or relationship issues. So the idea is here is to contextualize some of the behavioral patterns that you're assessing. So here's some examples: putting in vacation, concert, sickness, etc. You can also indicate other. So here's our 3-week timeline follow back calendar associated with the custom substance calendar. And you for events you can indicate other, and then you can type in whatever you want for that category. So here moved. So like um, yeah, so this is just an example that isn't included in one of the default options. So then, after the personal events are submitted, the user is going to be presented with the numeric calendar. And here we have the alcohol and cigarette variables. So for each day, enter the number of alcohol-containing drinks you had and enter the number of cigarettes you smoked. And the drink chart is also available here under resources. There's some of the reminders listed. And then there's a button here, click here to begin at the bottom of the calendar. So this will shift the user down to the bottom of the page to begin entering from the bottom going up. So here we're looking at the custom substance example. And it's pretty similar for each day in the calendar. Record running miles and record supplement pills use. There's also the URL embedded here for the instructional document. There's some reminders, and then there's the button to click to go to the bottom of the calendar. So a lot of that is the same as the standard substance example. And so we can also see here that the events that were provided on the prior calendar are embedded in this calendar here to help the participant remember their behavior of substance use. And just to note here, if you click next without completing the calendar, there'll be an exclamation point and this red font to kind of indicate to the participant that they haven't filled in those fields. So after submitting the numeric entries, the user will be presented with the binary or checkbox calendar. So here we have this is our standard substance example. So the e-cigarettes um, is the checkbox variable for this example. You can see that our personal events are still recorded, and even the numeric variables provided previously are illustrated here to really help contextualize participants' um, behavior. Just a note, this is moving on to the custom substance example, but you can also click a checkbox here at the top. If this is a daily behavior, someone can just go ahead and click the checkbox. And but if I'm a daily push-up user, here we go. I'll click the checkbox. All the checkbox will be filled in. That's probably not the case most of the time. People maybe have certain days off or them only using infrequently. And so here, there's just a few days where push-ups is endorsed. And then once all the substances are or behaviors are submitted, then we have a review calendar here. So here's the standard substance example of 5 weeks long. And we're provided with this calendar that provides an overview of everything that was submitted. And conveniently, you can click directly into the day to modify the alcohol, cigarettes, or e-cigarette entries, or whatever variables are here. Those can be directly modified in this review calendar. And then once the user participant takes a look at everything, confirms it all, they can go ahead and submit the data. And voila, it's entered into the REDCap form. So we have a secure data storage. That data can be pulled from there for however you want to analyze it. If you want to try the survey yourself, see the test links that we have within the digital brochure. You can go ahead and test out the custom substance or the standard um, I'm sorry, the custom behavior or the custom variable survey. And we also have the standard substance survey as well that you can test out. Wanted to just note some limitations to the application. So calendar surveys are limited to 3 variables. You may have noticed that. The Flex Timeline fallback is prepared to work with REDCap, but software could be created to integrate with other databases such as Qualtrics. So if you want to venture into the code yourself, you can try to make that jump, or that's something that you could hire me for hourly services to continue developing the Flex Timeline fallback to plug into Qualtrics or another database. Um, Depending on the database, in most cases, it's very possible to do that. The REDCap project can contain only 3 forms. So there's the sub ID entry form, which we created initially to set up the REDCap project. There's the timeline followback data form, and there's the timeline followback link form as well. So the Flex Timeline Fallback is only designed to work with these kind of standalone REDCap projects that have these 3 forms. And each timeline fallback survey must have its own REDCap project. So if you wanted to create a bunch of unique surveys, you need a unique REDCap project to house each of those surveys. For getting access to this tool, if you simply want the code and the READMEs for deploying it, that's a $50 charge, and I'll give your team access to the code, and you guys can take it from there. If you want me to go ahead and work on the deployment for you, that's a $400 charge. I would have to ask you about like what domain do you want, your lab name, and some other information to configure the site. And I'll go ahead and work to set up the backend databases, the Amazon Web Server databases, and services, and get everything ready to go for you for ease of use. And if there's some features that you want to add, that's something we can talk about. I am open to being paid hourly for expanding the tool to fit a particular need. And so that's something that I'm happy to discuss as well. Um, in the meantime, if you want any more details, please take a look at the digital brochure and reach out to me if you have any questions or want to pursue one of these options.